Welcome to the Evingson Wellness Blueprint, the podcast that takes you on a transformative journey to holistic health and well-being. Join hosts Matthew and Rebecca as they deep dive into the world of wellness, exploring a wide range of holistic modalities, alternative healing practices, and evidence-based approaches to living a vibrant and balanced life.
Katie Driessens has been a registered dietitian for nearly 14 years. She started out in inpatient Western medicine-focused care and then massively shifted her attention and focus to outpatient, integrative, holistic care after years of her own health problems being dismissed in the conventional sick care system. Underlying toxic indoor mold was the culprit, and this experience was a driving force to become a better practitioner herself and eventually a mold illness CIRS literate practitioner. Katie recently became a Dr. Shoemaker Proficiency Partner, but is also open-minded to many schools of thought as there is literature to support multiple paths to healing. At Dietetics with Driessens, her private practice, she dives deep with her patients, accepts insurance, and offers telehealth appointments for adult patients, and also has a fabulous online course called Healing from Mold. Welcome, Katie.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here today.
So, Katie, I'd love for you to share your story.
I'll take you back several years ago. We bought this house that we are still in, and we started all collectively having various health problems, but they were all different. My son started having respiratory concerns, GI issues, eczema. My daughter started having nosebleeds. My husband started having vertigo. I started gaining weight unintentionally despite no change in diet or exercise, was having ongoing yeast infections. I lost about 75% of my hair. I started to question mold because of my clinical training. And so I hired a mold inspector. They came out and they said, no mold problem whatsoever. And I was like, okay, I believe them though, because they're the expert. I should trust them. Things continued to get worse. My son was starting to be in and out of the ER every few weeks. I still think there is mold in my house. I have this mother's intuition. Hired another company who came out and did a different kind of evaluation. And they're like, nope, you're good. There is no problem whatsoever, is what the report said. And I was like, I just feel like that's what's going on. Now, at this point, my son sadly went into respiratory failure. And he was only 3 years old at the time. And in the ICU, when we were getting ready to be discharged, when he was stable, one of the doctors said to me, are you sure there's not mold in your house? And I was like, yes, I've had multiple inspectors out. Like, I was thinking that this whole last couple of years. I came home, we took a sledgehammer to a wall, and Mama Bear was right. I hired someone and they were like, there is a very severe problem in your attic, in your crawl space. It's leaking down this wall. There's a problem with your roof. And my whole world was rocked. And it was a blessing and a curse to find all these things. But now we at least had answers from that initial round of remediation. My son off all his medication, inhalers, steroids, creams, all the problems that he had been burdened with. He was a new kid within a month. And I have been on a journey since then. My daughter, nosebleed stopped, and my husband, most of his problems have vanished as well. So that is the condensed version of what happened to us. And since then, I have been on a journey to use my voice about the possibility of toxic indoor mold or other endotoxins being at the root. And I've personally helped hundreds of people one-on-one do that just in the last couple years. So I am Mama Bear turned professional health care practitioner in the mold literate space. So here we are today.
That is a powerful story. So mold can cause an array of different symptoms, and your son, children can bounce back quicker than adults.
Dr. Shoemaker says that in studies, children tend to bounce back, is the best way to put it, much faster than adults do. And you are correct that there are so many signs and symptoms as mold can show up differently in different people. There's things, comorbidities, genetics, are they HLA susceptible, time of exposure, duration of exposure. And a lot of times people mistakenly write off mold as not being a culprit, either causative or exacerbating factor of their health issues, because everyone's signs and symptoms are different. It's rare that I'm working with patients where they all have a cough or they all have respiratory. It's usually this family member has this and this one's totally fine and this person has this. And so no one ever connects the dots on mold. They just take it face value. Oh, yes, you have asthma. Oh, yes, you just have IBS. Oh, yes, you just have sleep apnea. And in reality, 170 million homes in the United States have water damage that can lead to clinically significant levels of mold. It's a very widespread problem. My son was seeing 8 doctors. I was seeing 4. My daughter had a handful of doctors. So did my husband. And when I brought it up, oh, no, that's not real. I heard that 15 different doctors. You are crazy, Katie. It's just not part of their training. I wish they would have said, I am not well versed in that, but maybe you should look into that more.
My mom started having cardiac rhythm disturbances. She went into the ER. They referred her to cardiology, and the cardiology recommended a medical procedure called an ablation and cardiac meds. I said to her, would you be willing to see a functional medicine cardiologist? So this was still a board certified cardiologist, but one that looked at the root cause. That first virtual visit with the functional medicine cardiologist, he said, I highly suspect that your symptoms, your cardiac arrhythmias, are a result of mycotoxins in your body. Would you be tested? And she said, absolutely. Through remediation, through treating her body for the mycotoxins, she was able to reverse her cardiac arrhythmias without having the ablation, without having cardiac meds. So it is profound how many different areas of the body mycotoxins can affect. It is helpful to hear stories like yours where each family member has different symptoms. I am curious how you found Dr. Shoemaker and what he does.
I was working with a business coach several years ago for my own private practice. And I said, we were trying to figure out what's going on with our house and if there's mold in it. And she said, Katie, I went through the same thing. You need to look into who Dr. Richie Shoemaker is. Went to his website, Surviving Mold, and my mind was blown. I started researching everything I could about mold and the CIRS biotoxin pathway. CIRS stands for chronic inflammatory response syndrome. So it's not a condition, it's technically an illness. And the silver lining in that is it can get better because we can treat it. It is a multi-symptom, multi-system illness, hence it can show up in various parts of the body. And so when you breathe in the biotoxin and you're exposed to it, if you have a certain gene, your body has a hard time tagging these endotoxins or biotoxins as foreign and releasing them from the body. About 75% of the population can handle a little mold or biotoxins in their environment, where people like me, it puts our immune system into disarray very easily. But the good thing is it's treatable. And the biggest pillars to treatment are to get the building healthy, find mold, remediate it, and put the preventative strategies in place so that way it doesn't grow back again. Then what you'll hear a lot of CIRS doctors say, take those toxins to the toilet, do binders, do whatever needs to be done to the body based off of this 12-step pathway that Dr. Shoemaker created. And then you can heal and move on with your life. And my life is so much better since having healed from CIRS. All of the original problems that I have are completely gone with treatment. So for people listening that don't know CIRS biotoxin pathway, when you have a certain genetic profile, when you are exposed to an endotoxin like mold, when you breathe it in, it goes into our nasal passageway, into our lungs, into our circulatory system, and it can go all over our body, hence why it can show up in so many different ways or signs or symptoms, because technically CIRS is a multi-symptom, multi-system illness. It made so much sense to me of why my son had GI issues. I had fungal issues. My daughter had neurological nosebleed type stuff. They have something for healthcare practitioners called their CIRS proficiency partnership. You are a nurse, I'm a registered dietitian. We can still sit for this exam and have the label of proficiency partner. We can't practice medicine, but we have demonstrated a mastery of knowledge of what CIRS is and how we can help people, because it is more than just prescribing medications. There's so many other things that we could do to help the body. I always say the body's a bathtub. I can help you with draining the tub, but we really need to get you in with the right people to help shut off the faucet, right? And get the home healthy, because you are only as healthy as your indoor environment. So many indoor environments are not healthy from water damage or humidity or whatever it is that led to the building being a sick building. With my experience personally, we had a couple people out. Now, had I known at the time what I know now, I would have never hired those individuals. They weren't certified. They, didn't follow IICRC standards. And at the time in Illinois where I live, that was legal. As of January 1st this year, you now have to be a certified mold inspector. So you have to, have proper training and credentialing, but not all states do. Again, why I'm so loud on my social media and on my podcast about the importance of hiring certified mold inspectors so you can get the right people to evaluate and heal the home. And then as it relates to healing your body, you can get the right people who have a mastery of knowledge like you and I to help with caring for the body. And then so many things get better. And not that there's anything wrong, I want to preface what I'm saying with Western medicine, right? There's a time and place for medication, surgery, all that. However, oftentimes we're just suppressing symptoms and we're not actually figuring out why is the body in so much disarray and dysfunction.
It could create a lot of conflict or frustration in a relationship as well. Say, for example, one partner has a genetic makeup that reduces their detoxification pathway. The other partner has none of those. Why are you sick and I'm not sick? We're living in the same house.
I'm so glad you're bringing that up. We personally experienced that, and that's so common. I hear that with so many families that I work with. Well, wouldn't we all be sick? Wouldn't we all have the same symptoms? And that is what stops so many people. We know that there are tens of millions of Americans walking around right now undiagnosed with CIRS. They're getting labeled, and it's not that the depression isn't real. It is real. Mold causes neurotoxicity. And like with your mother, yes, there are cardiac manifestations. And yes, your relentless diarrhea is real. But the big question is, why is that happening? And Western medicine, again, there's a time and place for it, but it's in the game of name it and tame it, not in the game of resolution. And I think that's the difference with a lot of mold literate practitioners is we understand that this can go away. We can fix a lot of things and resolve problems so that there's hope for people out there who have whatever their health problems are. I always say, are you sure, 100% sure that mold is not at the root of this? Because statistically speaking, for most people, it is a causative or exacerbating factor.
Say somebody wants to take a test to rule out mold, what would you recommend?
So I'm going to lump that into two categories. So testing the home and testing the body. I have a whole blog where I break down pros and limitations of different types of tests. Let's say we're going to start with the body. I would start with genetic testing. Now, Dr. Shoemaker's team does not support this, but I support mycotoxin testing, meaning serum mycotoxin antibody or urine mycotoxin testing, because then you can see what is the mycotoxin in my body. And oftentimes that goes hand in hand with what we're finding in the home. If there's aspergillus in the home, yes, we might see ochratoxin in the body. Shoemaker says just go to the CIRS panel, which I do think CIRS testing should be done too, especially if there are cluster symptoms of CIRS. The problem is CIRS blood work alone doesn't 100% rule in or rule out mold. It could be Lyme, it could be other endotoxins from other types of water damage. So that's where I like to do a mycotoxin test. While I say I'm Shoemaker proficient, I've passed the test. I am open-minded to what Dr. Jill Krista has to say, what Dr. Andrew Campbell has to say. I don't think that there is a 100% right way. You have to work with the patient and what their budget is. What are the patient's goals in all of this? Some people want what I call the full Cadillac, and some people are like, I want the Chevy. So I will listen to what the patient's preferences are. Now, in terms of testing, back to that initial question, I do think objective testing of the home needs to be done. And then a good certified inspector will also do thermography or looking at humidity levels to figure out where is the moisture? Why is the moisture there? Is it a ventilation issue? They will work up the home, see what the problem is, quantify it in terms of the severity. Is it a really high ERMI? Is it really high air sampling? Do remediation, put the preventative strategies in place, and then do a small particulate clean. Healing the body is complicated. There's downstream problems. It's not just CIRS. There's fungal issues. There's neurotoxicity, immunotoxicity. You want a good mold literate practitioner who can help you navigate. There are lots of objective tests and thousands of studies on this. So get someone who knows what they're doing and passionate about helping you find answers and resolve your problems when feasible.
Say somebody has known mold in their house or highly suspects mold in their house, what would you recommend?
I would recommend taking some sort of action, and I'm going to walk you through what that could look like. I do have a checklist on my website. You can see the order of operations of what I would do. I would recommend going right to a certified mold inspector. A lot of people say do an ERMI. I don't think that that's a bad step. An ERMI is an at-home dust sample. Basically, you take a swab of dust, and if there's microbial growth in that dust or there's mold or mycotoxins in it, it'll pick that up and it'll quantify it. The problem with ERMI, in my opinion, is it can overdiagnose and we can underdiagnose. You might not have a lot of mold in that dust right there, but there might be a big issue in another part of the home that you might be missing, and then you write it off completely. I always say the expression, all roads lead to certified mold inspection and remediation. So I have a blog on my website that talks about what are the questions that I would recommend asking. The first one being, are you certified? I also think it's a good idea to ask if they know what CIRS is. Do they understand the medical implications of what mold can do to the human body? If they don't, there's a whole following out there that believes that they're not going to be as thorough if they don't understand what CIRS is, what the IICRC is, which stands for the Institute of Inspection, Cleaning, and Restoration Certification. They should be following those standards. If they do find it, they should be following those standards for professional remediation, meaning sectioning off certain parts of the home, and they should be doing air scrubbing and possibly negative air pressure. There's a whole bunch of technicalities to it. I've got a list of questions on my website, but there's also a decent database. If you visit acac.org/find, you can enter in your zip code and it'll pull up certified inspectors in your area. Really good ones will travel to you. Once you find it, they will write up a remediation plan, and either they can do it, or a lot of times people want someone else to do it because there is some ethical things to consider there. Once they do the remediation, they usually then will put in the preventative strategies. So why did the mold grow in the first place? If someone just comes out, and we call these the spray and prayers, they just spray it and kill it, it's going to come right back if you didn't figure out the root cause of why it was there in the first place. For us, it was your ventilation in your attic sucks. It's humid up here. This is why the mold is growing on the joists. So we put in attic fans to suck that warm, moist, humid air out. For our crawl space, we have multiple issues in our house. It is a bare earth crawl space. It was so humid in there that the joists were coated in aspergillus and cladosporium. There was multiple types of mold growing there. They remediated it, but we needed to encapsulate our crawl space, and then they put in a professional dehumidifier so it wouldn't get so humid so the mold wouldn't grow back. I'm so pro finding someone who knows what they're doing and understands building biology and functionality of a home so it doesn't come back. And then the final frosting on the cake is small particle cleaning. And basically what that means is after you've had all this done, let's say there was mold growing in the basement due to a leak, they fix it. Those mold spores have been off-putting all through your house. Mold spores fart. They release mycotoxins, and that goes all over the house. And so there's residual on the walls, in your clothing. You need to do a whole home small particle clean. Some people argue you should throw away porous things. Sometimes people have to get new furniture. 1 square inch of mold puts off over 1 million spores a day. Breathing that in over time, a lot of people end up getting sick. But preventative things, what should you be looking at? What grows mold? Water, moisture. So start going around your house and figure out where could things go wrong here. Leaks underneath the sink. Very simple thing, buckets underneath every single sink. That's a very inexpensive thing you could do. So if for some reason it started to leak, it's going to go into a bucket likely. And I'm checking under my sinks every single day. Going into your attic and basement and getting something that will measure humidity. If there's a lot of moisture, then you likely need a dehumidifier in there, and you might need to even take it a step further and say, well, why is there so much humidity in here? Is there an airflow issue? Is it a ventilation issue? Is it an insulation issue? So there's a lot of things that could be looked into, and they'll know how to help you navigate. Okay, you need attic fans. You need more soffits in your roof. You need a better dehumidifier in this basement.
Yes. And then one point I want to add is maybe it's not the home. Is it the office? My mom had a flooded office. They'd run the dehumidifiers, dry everything out. That was likely one of the biggest sources that she was exposed to mold. And then what if you don't even live in that environment anymore, or you were in an environment at one time that you had no idea mold was there. So say, for example, you're in a perfectly good environment now, but you're still having symptoms of toxicity.
That's such a good point, and I'm so glad you brought that up, Becca. It's not always the house. It could be school, it could be work. If you suspect school or work, you should go to, if you're renting, the landlord, school admin, your boss, and they should be doing mold inspection and remediation if there's a suspected problem. Now, I know sometimes this gets real gray, and sadly, a lot of people will say they're not taking this seriously, they're not doing it. I don't want to get too much into the legalities, and I'm not an attorney, but what I will tell patients is reach out to Just Well Law. Christina Bayer is a very kind, compassionate mold litigation attorney, and she is a badass in our country. She's taken on the US military, colleges where kids were harmed from mold in the dorms, and she's tactful and good at holding responsible parties accountable. You could start with reaching out to a mold litigation attorney, just having them hear your story and see what the laws are for your state, what your rights are, and see what the next steps would be to put things in motion with the responsible parties. Now, if they still let it go on and they are responsible for continuing to expose you to a potentially lethal biotoxin, yes, this is how some things lead to court cases, but they didn't know in good faith. Now you're telling them you're sick. They inspect and they do the right thing and they get the place remediated. And then you bring up another point. What about old exposures? What about maybe the janky college apartment you lived in? I work with people that were like, oh yeah, my college dorm, there was black mold growing up the wall. I didn't think anything of it at the time. But now I'm struggling with infertility or I have migraines. If those mycotoxins are in circulation, you will continue to persist with these downstream signs and symptoms. And Western medicine will label it as allergies, migraines, secondary infertility, whatever. And they're not wrong to diagnose those things. I'm not trying to bash them, but is it a subset of a much larger problem that you have a mycotoxin bioaccumulation that's still wreaking havoc in your body? There are tens of millions of Americans walking around with undiagnosed chronic inflammatory response syndrome from either a old or current mold or biotoxin exposure. Even if it's an old exposure, you likely still need your body to have some sort of post mold protocol, even if you're no longer living in it. Yes, the faucet maybe is turned off, but we have got to drain your bathtub, and I would be honored to help.
You touched on fertility. How amazing if somebody is able to get to the root cause and draining the bathtub allowed them to get pregnant.
You're right. The silver lining with mold illness is it's an illness, not a condition. It can be healed and it can get better. And once we've fixed the environment, healed their body, they go on to reach their health goals, whatever that is, getting off inhalers, getting off of Zyrtec every single day, being able to have a baby. What a blessing if that's what their goals are. I know tackling mold can feel very daunting. I was there personally multiple times, but the alternative is staying stuck right where you're at. Sometimes it takes bold action, but there are professionals to help you navigate this. This is not all on your shoulders. It's important we provide awareness about this because it is such a common, widespread problem.
Post mold, what are ways you can support your body?
We always have to turn off the faucet, but if you have a lot of mycotoxin bioaccumulation, especially if you've got that gene, even when you leave that environment, is likely still in a constant state of inflammation. And so we've got to get those toxins to the toilet. Let's do a high-level overview of what metabolic detoxification is and what are some specific studied ways to help heal the body. So when I say metabolic detoxification, I'm not talking the marketing term of drink this detox tea for a week. What I'm talking about is supporting our body in its own innate detox pathways. Yes, you have a liver, but the liver detoxes well when it's not past its toxin processing capacity, when nutrient deficiencies have been corrected, and when drainage pathways are open. So what I'll say is let's support the body in those innate abilities. If you're really blocked up, which some people from mold tend to get low stomach acid or constipation, some people go to the other extreme of diarrhea if they've developed a hydrogen dominant SIBO or something like that. But regardless, I almost always start with the gut. We got to get you pooping because that is the main way toxins leave the body. So I always say the body's a funnel. We're going to start at the bottom and we're going to work our way up. So detoxing, we're going to work with the gut first, make sure we're at least getting you regular. Then I will focus on bioflow support, because that is where a lot of the toxins leave. The liver packages them up and ships them out with the bile then to the gut, and then the binder scoops it up and takes it to the toilet. And then we want to focus on how can we help support the liver. If you've got nutrient deficiencies, B12, vitamin D, low on glutathione, those are ingredients, if you will, in the liver's job to package up and ship out. If you're really low on ingredients, we've got to figure out how to give the liver all the ingredients that it needs and make sure it's in optimal amounts so it is packaging up and shipping out as fast as it should. Because if you're low on that process, it's like trying to drive a car to California with no gas. You've got to fill the gas tank and keep it full so you can keep driving. The liver is another big area, then the binders. And then from there, I go up the funnel even further. Let's work on cellular health. Mold is an assault on our mitochondria. How can we support cell membrane integrity? We're giving our body antioxidant rich foods. Beets are great, cherries, all the different colors of the rainbow, plant forward. I don't think meat's bad. I eat lots of meat too. You need protein through all of this. There's a ton of detail we could get into with nutrition, but the high level overview of view the body as a funnel. We got to work on the gut. We've got to work on the actual detoxification part of it, binders, and then we got to work on cellular health. While I love being a Shoemaker proficiency partner, it is, for lack of a better word, narrow lensed on CIRS, and mold can do so much more to the body besides just CIRS. Mold is neurotoxic, hepatotoxic, nephrotoxic, immunotoxic, carcinogenic. So we can't just use binders and nasal sprays to treat the CIRS. We've got to address the whole body. When working with people one-on-one, I'm really focused on the whole person, but those are a snippet of the things that we do. I'm just optimizing innate metabolic detoxification, and we're trying to pull and drag those toxins out because they should not be there. It gets so much more nuanced than that, but that's an overview of what to expect if you're like, what does she mean detox the body? We're not drinking like a detox tea for a week. We're supporting your normal organ function.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you speak about how your vision can change with mold exposure?
That's an excellent question. This test is free, what Becca is speaking to. So it's called the Visual Contrast Sensitivity Test. You go to www.vcstest.com and you're going to create an account, and then you're going to answer questions. And you basically are going up to the screen like this, and it's testing your visual contrast sensitivity, essentially. If you score low in certain areas and you're not able to detect a lot of contrast sensitivity, then you might fail the exam, but technically you'll see like the word positive across the screen. If you get a positive score, that means you have altered visual contrast sensitivity, and that is something that mold or other biotoxins can do. And so I'm so glad you brought that up, Becca, because that is a free resource to people. Some websites charge money for it, but that specific URL that I gave you is a free one, and that's what I send all my patients to. So back to that question you asked me earlier. Okay, if you think or know mold in your home, you can go do that free visual contrast sensitivity screening. I will say it's just a screening tool. It doesn't mean it's from mold. It could be from Lyme, or it could just be maybe your vision is going and you need to see an optometrist. But if you do have a positive test, I would encourage look into mold into your environment, because yes, how wonderful is that? Your vision could get better. Maybe you don't really need a stronger prescription. Maybe you just need to get out of mold and detox your body. You can do that test again and see, is the vision improving? Now, Shoemaker believes you should completely pass the test as a marker of rounding up healing from CIRS, and now we can use something called VIP spray if you end up needing the VIP spray. But that is such a good free resource and screening tool for people that are questioning mold, or if they're trying to just gauge their progress.
Katie, if somebody is interested in working with you or following you on social media, how do they find you, and do you take insurance?
I'm most active on Instagram at Functional Nutrition Dietitian. There's a period in between each word. So Functional Nutrition Dietitian, that's me. A lot of it is about mold specifically, but I talk about other types of integrative care. So integrative means the marrying of Western medicine and functional, holistic, integrative. And why I say I'm integrative is I do think there's a time and place for medication. I have worked in pharma before. I do believe people need surgery for certain things, but we can't discount the power of lifestyle, nutrition, and safe environments. And that became so personal to me when Western medicine was failing me with just throwing medication at me and my family for every single problem, when we didn't need medication. We needed to be breathing in safe air, and we needed to detox our bodies. I was one of those practitioners, and it makes me cringe, but I said this all the time. If you have a liver, you're detoxing. Now, I literally have a podcast called Discerningly Detoxing, where we talk all about evidence-based ways to support your body in metabolic detoxification. So my Instagram is not just mold, it's integrated conversations about detoxing, about functional tests I do, GI map testing, Dutch testing. I see patients for a full range of health related issues. And yes, I am a little bit of a unicorn. I do take insurance. I take Aetna, Blue Cross or Anthem plans, and United or UMR plans. And most patients that see me, I'd say 99% walk away with no bill for consultation time, because most insurances, since the Affordable Care Act, cover 100% of what my service is called medical nutrition therapy. So you can see me and have your insurance usually pay 100%. Crazy enough, Blue Cross and United, it's usually unlimited. So let's say you're sitting there in your home and you're like, gosh, I think there's mold in my house. What do I do? Where do I start? You can go to my website. I've got a checklist. I've got lots of free resources on there. But I ultimately think you need to hire people. Now, it doesn't have to be me. I will say, though, I am the only shoemaker proficiency partner in the country that does take insurance. I'm not a doctor, though. So if you need medical evaluation, you still need to work with a physician. But there's a lot that I can do to help patients. I do have a course that I call Healing from Mold 101 that walks you through the start to finish. Everything that you need to do. There's protocols in there. There's tons of resources in there. Access to state laws, hiring mold inspector, meal plans. If for people that the harsh reality is if they lack accessibility to healthcare practitioners or doctors, I've got an online course for that. It doesn't replace working one-on-one, but it will walk you through step by step almost everything that you need to do. So that's another very low cost resource. I think I have it as $97 online. Now, a couple things not related to me at all that I want to talk about what you can do. So people always think like, gosh, how much is this going to cost in terms of my home? So many people don't know what a public adjuster is. They think something's wrong in my home. I need to call my homeowner's insurance. Homeowner's insurance is in the business of denying claims. Oh, that was 31 days instead of 30 days. You didn't call soon enough, denying, or whatever the situation is. But if you hire a public adjuster, you go to www.napia.com. You can look at the national database of public adjusters. The claims adjusters represent you. They are trying to get that claim to go through, and they know and understand this world. They know how to read your policy. They know the right things to say when they call on your behalf to try to file a claim. Sometimes people think, oh my gosh, I see hundreds of thousands of dollars or whatever it is that they are visualizing in cost of damages. Sometimes that's covered. The word mold is rarely covered, but water damage, appliance failure, there are a lot of things that can be covered. Other really good resources, Change the Air Foundation have free resources on their website. Every now and then, I think they have grants for people that are in need. They're representing people who have been harmed from mold and empowering them with understanding their state laws. They have an interactive website where you can go to your state and see like what are indoor air laws for your state, information about mold litigation. It's a really good free resource out there. So I guess my main message with a lot of this stuff is there are practitioners that take insurance. There are free resources online. You may not be looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars in damages to your home. It might actually be covered. So exhaust some of these resources and see, because for a lot of people, it's cost that is keeping them in a state of what I call analysis paralysis. And I understand, I was there. Like, what do I do? But know that it might not be as expensive as what you're expecting. And when people realize that, oh, maybe this stuff is covered, they're more likely to start taking action.
Beautiful. I loved the resources you've shared. Thank you so much for spending time with us today.
You're very welcome. I'm honored to help.
Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. I hope today's episode inspired you on your journey of wellness. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a review, subscribing, and sharing it with a friend. Also, I'd love to hear from you. Drop me a message at www.hevingsonwellness.com.